So let's be honest, whether you love it or hate it, the Ballon d'Or remains the most prestigious individual honour in football, with players, fans and media alike all pining to win, discuss and debate the merits of potential winners each year. And as debates begin to heat up for the 2024 award, with a new era of candidates emerging, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to look back at the 45 players who have won the award and analyse what it can teach us about the evolution of the game, beginning with the creation of the award all the way back in 1956 in France, when football journalists Gabriel Anot and Jacques Ferrand came up with the idea to honour the year's best footballer with the Ballon d'Or, which directly translates to the Golden Ball in English. The results would be published in L'Equipe's own magazine, France Football, with the winner being decided following votes from a variety of football journalists from across Europe, with these 16 nations being represented at the first vote. The journalists would rank the top 5 footballers of the year from 5th to 1st, with a first place ranking being worth 5 points and a 5th place ranking being worth 1 point. The award was initially limited to solely European footballers playing in Europe and was often referred to as European Footballer of the Year, with it strangely being awarded in line with the calendar year rather than the European football calendar. The first Ballon d'Or was an extremely tight affair, as just 3 votes split the top 2, with European Cup winner Alfredo Di Stefano being beaten out by a 41-year-old Stanley Matthews. One of the most iconic names in English football history, Matthews' Ballon d'Or is viewed by many to be a life achievement award rather than being representative of his performances in 1956. But if anyone deserves a life achievement award, it was him. Once described by Pelé as the man who taught us the way football should be played, Matthews was known as the Wizard of the Dribbles due to his ability to turn defenders inside and out despite playing on terrible pitches. But it was his longevity which sets him apart, earning a professional contract on his 17th birthday at Stoke City in 1932 and earning his first England cap just 2 years later in a match against Wales, before quickly establishing himself as the nation's best footballer. The Second World War unfortunately prevented him from playing during his peak years of 24 to 30, but whilst his teammates and opposition were drinking all night, he committed himself to a professionalism which wouldn't be normalised in Britain until Arsene Wenger's arrival at Arsenal in 1996. This allowed him to prolong his career, winning the first ever Football Writers Player of the Year in 1948 at 33 years of age, but would even more remarkably win it a second time 15 years later when he was 48. He would retire at 50, following one of the most star-studded testimonials in the sport's history, as stars of the English game like Moore, Charlton and Greaves, as well as stars of the European game like Stefano, Yashin and Eusebio, came to honour the most respected man in the sport. It was this respect that probably helped him earn the first Ballon d'Or, although he still had a fabulous year, the key man in driving Blackpool to their highest finish in club history, falling just short of Manchester United to sit second. Whilst the particularly impressive performance against Brazil in a friendly has been credited with pushing some journalists into voting for him ahead of Di Stefano. Whereas Di Stefano could feel aggrieved not to win it in 1956, 1957 would see him run away with the crown, placing first from 12 of the 16 journalists and second from 3, with no other player receiving votes from more than half the journalists. Regarded by most to be the best pre-Pelé footballer, Di Stefano was eligible for the award despite being Argentinian born and raised, because he represented the Spanish national team following his move to Real Madrid. Argentina's first great number 10, Di Stefano was a silky dribbler and the creative hub of the most dominant team in European history, whilst all but scoring a goal a game, as Real Madrid won 5 consecutive European Cups. In the 1957 European Cup, he scored 9 in 10, including the opener in their 2-0 victory against Italian champions Fiorentina in the final, whilst also having the best goal-scoring year of his career at international level, scoring 7 in 7, although a 4-2 qualifying loss to Scotland would cost them their place at the 1958 World Cup. But 1958 marked an even more successful season at club level, winning a historic first League and European Cup double, while still being the standout player in the team, scoring 10 in 7 European matches. He was all but a lock for a second successive Ballon d'Or when it was declared he was ineligible on the basis that nobody would be awarded the trophy more than once, in a similar way to the Golden Boy today. This stance would only last a season, with him winning the 1959 Ballon d'Or comfortably and going on to finish in the top 6 in the following 2 years. Although despite winning 2 Ballon d'Ors, you can't help but think it could and should have been more, which is so impressive considering he was already in his 30s when the first Ballon d'Or was awarded. In his absence, the 1958 Ballon d'Or would highlight the importance voters would place on performances at the World Cup in deciding who they awarded the game's most prestigious individual trophy to. Although the 1958 World Cup will forever be associated with the emergence of Pelé, leading a stacked Brazilian team to their first star, there were also European teams and players who shone, and the 3 podium sitters of the Ballon d'Or were probably the pick of the bunch. Just Fontaine could find himself himself unlucky to finish third after scoring a record 13 goals at the World Cup, whilst also leading Rim to a league and cup double, maintaining a scoring rate above 1 throughout the year, whilst the tournament's second top scorer, equal with Pele, Helmut Rahn, came second, although the Ballon d'Or winner mixed eye-catching World Cup performances with high-profile club success, alongside Stefano at Madrid in Raymond Kopa. The French winger scored 3 as an extremely attacking French side scored a record 23 goals en route to the semi-final, only losing to a Pele hat-trick. But it isn't his goal scoring that has him in the pantheon of French greats, rather his uniquely special ability in the dribble. Almost universally seen as the best European dribbler football had seen at the time, Kopa had joined Real Madrid on the back of losing to them in the first ever European Cup final, where he shifted away from his typical inside position to out wide due to the existence of Di Stefano. 1958 saw him win the second of 3 consecutive European Cups during his time in the Spanish capital, with France Football explaining, "Technically, Kopa has perfected the game. Finesse, precision, passing. He masters the wonder of the dribble by feints alone. We have never seen anyone better at performing the 1-2. Kopa does not merely pass to his teammates randomly, he always puts them in the best position." This would be his only Ballon d'Or, but he had placed third in the first 2 editions and was runner-up to Di Stefano in 1959, showcasing the consistency he maintained during his prime years. 1960 saw the Ballon d'Or leave Real Madrid for their biggest rivals, despite winning a 5th consecutive European Cup, as Luis Suarez beat out Real Madrid's newest superstar, Ferenc Puskas, to raise the Golden Ball. The Barcelona superstar remains the only Spanish-born footballer to ever win the award, and played a crucial role in toppling the dominant Real Madrid to win La Liga, scoring 13 in 23 from the centre of midfield. Later in life he compared himself in style to Xavi, but added, "Only I could shoot," and pass the ball 40 yards. The following year he would break the transfer record to move to Inter Milan, and would place on the podium of the Ballon d'Or another 3 times, with him, and I, if I'm honest, believing he should have won a second in 1964, when he led Inter to the European Cup and was the Euro standout player as Spain won their first major honour, whilst the player whose transfer record he beat, Omar Savori, would get his back by beating out Suarez by just 6 votes to lift the 1961 Ballon d'Or. Another example of a Eurified Argentinian, Savori moved to the ever-growing dominant power of Italian football in 1957 for a record fee, playing a crucial role as Juventus claimed the Serie A title in 1961, scoring 28 in 29. As was typical with the best players at the time, Savori was described as an extremely technical footballer who had mastered dribbling, although his pace and fearlessness stood him apart from even the best of his peers. He was known for wearing his socks down without any shin pads, as a way to send a message to overly aggressive defenders that he was not scared and would run at and through them all game. The 1962 Ballon d'Or once again proved the importance of the World Cup to voters, as Josip Masopust won following Czechoslovakia's run to the final. One of the more unknown winners ever, Masopust played the majority of his career inside the Eastern Bloc, with international tournaments being the greatest opportunity to showcase his talents. Following a 3rd place finish at the inaugural Euros in 1960, it was his performances in the middle of the park for an impressive and controlled Czechoslovakia that caught the eye of onlookers. Firstly, in a group game against Brazil, an act of chivalry earned Masopust the nickname the Knight. With Pele injured, unable to move properly, and easy to tackle in a time before substitutes, Masopust refused to challenge his injured opponent, earning the Brazilians' respect and the admiration of the footballing world. He would go on to open the scoring against Brazil in the final, although the great South Americans, even without Pele, came back to win 3-1. Following his impressive World Cup and Ballon d'Or victory, Masopust made numerous attempts to leave Czechoslovakia to chase the money in Western Europe, but was denied until 1968 when he was past his best, joining second-tier Belgium side, crossing Molenbeek, where he led the team to the top division for the first time in their history as player-coach. Masopust scored 10 goals in 63 appearances for Czechoslovakia and was voted Czech Republic's greatest ever footballer in 2004. The 1963 Ballon d'Or would once again go to someone behind the Iron Curtain, as Lev Yashin became the first and only goalkeeper to ever win the award. The most respected goalkeeper on the planet, Yashin had polled more votes than any other keeper in 4 of the first 6 Ballon d'Ors, with his performances in ending Dynamo Moscow's 4-year title drought being otherworldly. In his 27 appearances, he kept 23 clean sheets and conceded just 5 times, although it was his style of play that caught the eye of fans and gained the respect of fellow professionals. Nicknamed the Black Spider, Yashin possessed reflexes and athleticism well beyond the time whilst commanding the box with authority despite the complete lack of protection goalkeepers would receive. Although Western journalists would not have been watching much domestic Soviet football, so his performance for the rest of the world against England at Wembley in celebration of the FA's 100th anniversary may have been what took him over the line. He made some fabulous saves and kept a clean sheet before being taken off at half-time, with England going on to win 2-1, in a game which included most of Europe's best players. Yashin stood above them all, helping him win a deserved Ballon d'Or. Even though he'd never win it again, he was still the highest placing goalkeeper for the next 3 years before retiring from international football in 1967. The 1964 Ballon d'Or that I said Luis Suarez should have won ultimately went to Manchester United's Denis Law. The iconic Scotsman hit the form of his life in 1964, scoring 22 in 20 in the back half of the 1963-64 season, including hat-tricks in the quarter-final of the FA Cup and Cup Winners' Cup, although this wasn't enough for Manchester United to win either cup or the league, finishing 4 points behind rivals Liverpool. Law continued his form, scoring 18 in the first half of the season as Manchester United went on to lift the league title in 1965. However, he became the first player to win the Ballon d'Or without winning a trophy in that year since Stanley Matthews. Whilst the 1963 Ballon d'Or was won by the Black Spider, 1965 would see the Black Panther become the first black player to win the prestigious award. Born in Mozambique, the uniquely talented forward moved to Portugal after Benfica hijacked Sporting's move for the 18-year-old, with him scoring a hat-trick on debut. 1962, his first full year in Europe, would be historic, quickly establishing himself as his club's best player as Benfica went on to beat Real Madrid in the European Cup final, with Eusebio scoring a brace. This would be enough to earn him second in the Ballon d'Or. However, 3 years later, he would finally get his hands on the Golden Ball. He scored over a goal a game in the league to lead Benfica to a third consecutive title, although it was his performances on the European stage that caught the headlines. He scored 7 of Portugal's 9 goals in World Cup qualifying to carry the nation to their first ever World Cup, and scored 9 in 9 in the European Cup, including 2 in the quarter and semi-final. Unfortunately, he failed to score as they lost 1-0 to Inter Milan in the final, but his goal-scoring year earned him a deserved Ballon d'Or. The 1966 World Cup was undoubtedly his peak though, winning the Golden Boot with 9 goals, including a brace against back-to-back world champions Brazil. He would score a penalty against England in the semi-final, but unfortunately a Bobby Charlton brace would be enough to send them home, with the Englishman being the man to pip him to that year's Ballon d'Or in the closest count ever. Charlton earned just 1 more vote than Eusebio and is seen by many to be the best English footballer ever. As survivor of the Munich air disaster, Charlton became England and Manchester United's all-time record scorer from midfield, with both those records not being broken until Wayne Rooney came along half a century later. In addition to bringing football home, 1966 saw Charlton's Manchester United end the year 2 points clear of Liverpool at the top of the table, and had scored and beaten Eusebio prior to the World Cup in the European Cup quarter-final. Manchester United would convert their top place finish the following year and would become the first English team to win the European Cup in 1968, with Charlton captaining the side and scoring 2 in the final, once again against his old foe Eusebio. He would fall short of the Ballon d'Or in both these years, finishing second, with Florian Albert being the beneficiary of the first one of those in 1967, when he became the only Hungarian to win the Ballon d'Or. Emerging in the twilight of the nation's golden era, Albert won the Golden Boot and would retrospectively be awarded Young Player of the Tournament at the 1962 World Cup, and would appear in the team of the tournaments at both the 1964 and 1966 major tournaments. The much respected forward played his whole career at Hungarian giants Ferencváros, winning 4 league titles during his 16 years, playing football with an elegance and style more like an attacking midfielder than your typical number 9, with 1964 perhaps being the greatest year of his club career, as Ferencváros became Hungarian champions and won the Intercities Fair Cup, the predecessor to the UEFA Cup, beating Italian giants Juventus 1-0 in the final away in Turin. It remains the most significant trophy the club has ever won, and is the only major European trophy won by a Hungarian club. He also managed to be joint top scorer with Eusebio of the 1966 European Cup with 7 goals in just 4 matches, which makes 1967 a peculiar year for him to win his Ballon d'Or. It lacked the European or international highlights of previous years, although it was the highest scoring season of his career, scoring 39 in 46 as he won his third league title. In 1968, Charlton's European Cup winning teammate George Best would win the award. At just 22, Best became the youngest man to win the Ballon d'Or, with his record lasting a remarkable 29 years. Seen as one of the most talented footballers ever, Best played with a freedom and joy reminiscent of the greatest Brazilians. In his first season in the first team, as a teenager, Manchester United rose from 19th to 2nd in the league, with them quickly becoming a superstar. In 1968, he maintained a scoring rate above a goal every other game from out wide, and scored a crucial winner against Real Madrid en route to the European Cup final, where he once again scored the winning goal in extra time. Problems with alcoholism meant his career took a nosedive by the time he was 26. However, at his peak, not many can compare in terms of talent to Best. In 1969, Italy's record goal scorer, Gigi Riva, missed out on the Ballon d'Or to fellow countryman Gianni Rivera by just 4 votes. Rivera was a well-established superstar by 1969, having polled votes in 6 previous Ballon d'Ors, including a second-place finish in 1963. But a second European Cup with AC Milan, this time as captain, pushed him over the line, with him providing 2 assists in the final against Ajax. One of the most talented and intelligent midfielders in Italy's history, Rivera was capable of moments of magic, usually from creating, but he wasn't afraid to shoot either, actually winning a Serie A Golden Boot in 1972-73 and remaining the highest scoring midfielder in league history, only retiring at 35 after claiming his first league title in 11 years in 1979. He remains 4th on Milan's record appearance list, behind only Maldini, Baresi and Costa Curta. Another World Cup year and another Ballon d'Or awarded to one of the standout performers, as German great Gerd Mgller won his one and only Ballon d'Or following claiming the Golden Boot at the 1970 World Cup. The top scorer in Bundesliga and Bayern Munich history, Mgller scored a remarkable 10 goals, including 2 in their semi-final loss to Italy, to go along with a record-breaking 38 goals in the Bundesliga in 1969-70, with no one other than himself being able to beat that record until Robert Lewandowski 51 years later. The true epitome of a goalscorer, Mgller lacked the technical beauty and finesse of many other Ballon d'Or winners, but nobody until the 2 modern greats could compare in terms of goals, remaining 3rd in the all-time scoring list across Europe's top 5 leagues, especially impressive considering he joined Bayern Munich when they were in the 2nd tier, having not played in the top division of Germany since prior to the Second World War. A victim of being Franz Beckenbauer's teammate at club and international level, Mgller would fall short of winning it again, finishing on the podium 3 times without winning, although he would retire having won 3 European Cups, a European Championship and a World Cup, going down as one of football's greatest ever number 9s. Now, after 15 Ballon d'Ors, there had been 14 different winners from 8 different leagues, which feels unthinkable for the modern world of a few superstars establishing themselves above the rest for year upon year. But this highlights the variety of great players who emerged during this era, yet an inability for many people to maintain their peak form for a prolonged period of time. The next decade would be completely different, however, as 4 different players won multiple Golden Balls, beginning with Johan Cruyff in 1971. The most dominant winner since Stefano in 1957, Cruyff was ranked first from 19 of the 26 voters to claim a landslide victory. A rather obvious winner, Cruyff had been the heartbeat of Rinus Michels' beautiful Ajax European Cup winning team, leading the team for goals and assists. But more than his output, Cruyff was the embodiment of what Ajax and Dutch football would become. Technically a genius, and even more importantly, had an ability to see the game 3, 4 or even 5 passes ahead, allowing him to look like he was playing a different game to his opponents. The following year, Ajax would retain their European Cup and regain the titles of Feyenoord, with Cruyff scoring and assisting more goals than the year prior. But unfortunately, the Netherlands' absence from the European Championship cost him the privilege of becoming the first man to retain the Ballon d'Or, although he wouldn't have to wait that much longer to become the first player to win it back-to-back, as he comfortably earned the 1973 Ballon d'Or following a 3rd consecutive European Cup with Ajax and a record transfer to Barcelona. He would also win it in 1974, less comfortably on this occasion, after ending Barcelona's 14-year title drought and being the standout player for the Dutch team, who were the starring light at the World Cup, before being shocked by West Germany in the final. Cruyff would remain at Barcelona until leaving for Los Angeles Aztecs of the North American Soccer League in 1979 at 32, having earned Ballon d'Or votes at every edition of the award between 1967 and 1978, having established himself as the first member of the highly exclusive 3-time Ballon d'Or winning club. The 1972 Ballon d'Or, which Cruyff just missed out on, was the tightest three-way battle ever, as just 2 votes split a trio of West German Euro winners. In joint second, you had Euro's best performer, Günter Netzer, and Gerd Mgller, on the back of the Golden Boot at the Euros and breaking his own Bundesliga goalscoring record. But the winner, who beat 3 extremely strong candidates, was not an elite goalscorer or genius creative midfielder, but rather the first of just 3 defenders to win the Ballon d'Or. This was of course Franz Beckenbauer, the Kaiser, the Emperor. Not only did he win the Ballon d'Or once, but twice. Almost universally agreed upon to be the greatest defender of all time, Beckenbauer was everything you could want in a sweeper. Having dropped back from midfield, where he had scored 16 in 31 to drive Bayern to promotion as a 19-year-old, and scored 4 for Germany at the 1966 World Cup, Beckenbauer possessed the technical quality, dribbling and passing range of the best number 10s, go alongside the calmness and positioning of the greatest defenders of all time, and a bravery unlike most, highlighted by the 1970 World Cup semi-final, when following dislocating his shoulder late in the match and in excruciating pain, he continued to play the match, wearing an improvised sling despite the game going to extra time. They would go on to lose this match, but nobody could ever question the Kaiser's determination to win. In 1972, the year of his first Ballon d'Or, he captained both Bayern Munich to the Bundesliga title and West Germany to the European Championship, whilst never putting a foot wrong. His West German side were historically good, defeating former champions the Soviet Union 3-0 in the final, rewarded by the Ballon d'Or podium being monopolised by West Germans, a feat that would only ever be repeated twice more. The West Germans proved their greatness by winning the World Cup in 1974 against Cruyff's great Dutch side, but as we know, Cruyff just edged him out to be the Ballon d'Or winner on this occasion. His second Ballon d'Or came in 1976, when he led Bayern Munich to a historic 3rd consecutive European Cup and reached another major final with West Germany, unfortunately losing this time to Panenka's iconic penalty. His longevity matched Cruyff, gaining votes in every year between 1965 and 1976, and placing 3rd all time in terms of finishes in the top 3, top 5 and top 10 of the award, only being prevented from more votes because he left Europe to join Pelé at the New York Cosmos in 1977. Within the pair's era of dominance, 1975 marked the only year neither won it, when Dynamo Kiev striker Oleg Blokhin won by a landslide following a historic season for the Soviet Giants. The all-time record scorer for Dynamo Kiev, the Soviet Union top division and national team, Blokhin was a deadly and electrifying forward at the tip of legendary manager Valery Lobanovsky's possession-based side, which remains the greatest team ever produced by this region of Europe. 1975 was the best and most decorated year of his career, winning the Golden Boot as he won the 3rd of his 8 league titles, in addition to a breakthrough year in Europe. Firstly, they overcame clubs like Frankfurt and PSV to reach the Cup Winners' Cup final against Ferencváros, where Dynamo became the first Soviet club to win a European trophy, when Blokhin assisted the first and scored a marvellous individual goal in a 3-0 win. But his Ballon d'Or would be secured in the Super Cup, when he was directly matched up against his main rival for the award, Beckenbauer. Blokhin won the first leg for Dynamo away to the European champions when he sprinted through from midfield, leaving Bayern's defence in the dust to score the one and only goal of the game. In the second leg, he scored both goals, including a fabulous free kick in front of over 100,000 fans to take the Super Cup for Dynamo 3-0 in aggregate. It would be the pinnacle achievement of the great Dynamo squad, with Blokhin being awarded the Ballon d'Or just 2 months later. The 1977 Ballon d'Or would be the first time neither Beckenbauer nor Cruyff stood on the podium for 7 years, as Danish forward Allan Simonsen won the trophy in another nail-biting race. He beat out to 22-year-old Michel Platini by 4 points and European Cup winner Kevin Keegan by 3 points to become the only Danish footballer to win the Ballon d'Or. It would be fair to say this award began a short trough in absolute iconic footballers winning the award in the wake of a golden era. Parallels can be made to today, where there is an underwhelming sentiment surrounding potential winners, once again following a golden era for the Ballon d'Or, which highlights the potential difficulty of following up icons and suggests a natural cycle to football rather than an existential crisis to the game that some suggest it to be. In 1977, Simonsen, a diminutive forward standing at just 5'5", led Borussia Mönchengladbach to a 3rd consecutive title in one of the tightest title races ever, as just 4 points split first from 5th. As a second striker, he only scored 12 league goals, with him more often setting up experienced strike partner Jupp Heynckes, who led the team for goals. Although it was his performances in the European Cup which caught the eye of Ballon d'Or voters, firstly Simonsen scored in Borussia Mönchengladbach's 3-1 final loss to Liverpool before scoring 5 in 4 in the first half of the following season. He would go on to move to Barcelona in 1979, where he played for 3 seasons before being replaced in Catalonia by Maradona. Simonsen then spent a bizarre 16-game spell at second-tier English side Charlton Athletic before moving back to Denmark for the final 7 seasons of his career after almost bankrupting the English minnows. The following year saw Kevin Keegan win the first of his 2 consecutive Ballon d'Ors. A quirk of the voting system, Keegan had actually received more votes to win the Ballon d'Or the year prior, but in 1978 he accumulated at least a vote from a larger share of the journalists, helping him gain 16 more points to finish 6 clear of Barcelona's Hans Krankel. By my reckoning, the weakest player to win it twice, Keegan's 1978 was the poorest individual year to win a Ballon d'Or, bar none. Keegan had a slow start to life in Hamburg following his move from European Cup winners Liverpool in the summer of 1977, only accumulating 2 goals in the back half of the 77-8 season as Hamburg lurched to 10th, with his goals only rising to 3 at the beginning of the following league season prior to the votes being cast. England were also absent from the World Cup, an event usually given so much importance to from the voters. This awarding of the Ballon d'Or has been described by some as scandalous, and I find it hard to argue, although he was more deserving the following year, managing to rocket up to 17 goals in the Bundesliga as Hamburg claimed their first Bundesliga title. Still, it's very impressive to be the weakest ever 2-time Ballon d'Or winner, because hey, you've won 2 Ballon d'Ors. And to another 2-time winner we go now, as Karl-Heinz Rummenigge won the trophy back-to-back in 1980 and 1981. The next man on Bayern Munich's conveyor belt of world-class strikers, Rummenigge was a truly elite forward, possessing marvellous touch and technique, electrifying pace, and genius movement in the box. He was as good a replacement as you could hope to get for Gerd Mgller. In 1980, he scored 27 league goals to claim the Golden Boot and Bayern's first league title in 6 years, with them ending the year just 1 point off the leaders Hamburg for the following season, to go along with 5 European Cup goals in 4 matches and a successful Euros, placing in the team of the tournament and getting the winning assist as West Germany became the first nation to win it twice. This would see him dominate the voting, with 24 of the 25 journalists placing him first on their ballots, with nobody ever getting a larger share of first place votes. He would get into the form of his life in the back end of the 1980-81 season, scoring 12 in the last 8 games of the Bundesliga to see Bayern win 8 on the bounce to retain their title. This would be enough to earn a second Ballon d'Or at 26, joined on the podium by a pair of fellow West Germans, Paul Breitner and Bernd Schuster. Whereas the 1978 World Cup was ignored, the standout player of the 1982 edition won the Ballon d'Or in Paolo Rossi. Having failed to score in his opening 4 appearances at the World Cup, Rossi scored a hat-trick against the great Brazilian team to surprisingly qualify Italy through the second group stage, with them going on to score a brace against Poland in the semi-final and the opener in the final against West Germany, earning the Golden Boot and Italy's 3rd star. Although this World Cup could have been very different, as Rossi was initially meant to be banned for the tournament following receiving a 3-year ban from football in 1980 for his involvement in the infamous Italian betting scandal known as Tontonero. Having always claimed his innocence, Rossi's suspension was reduced to 2 years, with him returning to the Juventus squad just weeks prior to the World Cup. At the beginning of the following season, the renowned goalscorer had mixed form, scoring a goal a game in the European Cup but only managing 3 in the league, although his performances at the World Cup alone were always going to be enough to earn votes from journalists who always love a redemption arc. In 1983, Rossi's Juventus teammate Michel Platini won the first of his record-breaking 3 consecutive Ballon d'Ors to join Johan Cruyff at the top of the pile. Having polled votes in the previous 7 years, placing 3rd as early as 1977 when he was still at boyhood club Nancy, Platini finally got his hands on a newly designed Ballon d'Or in 1983. His win was also dominant, finishing 84 points ahead of second place Kenny Dalglish, with there being parallels being able to be made with Platini and Kylian Mbappe today. I say this because you can make a very good argument that Platini had already been the best European footballer for years prior to 1983, although he had always been playing domestic football in France, with by this point league snobbery being very much alive, with many voters dismissing anyone playing outside of the dominant leagues of the time in England, Germany, Spain, and particularly Italy. So his move to Juventus in the summer of 1982 at 27 years of age felt overdue, and under the pressure of demanding media, he initially struggled to adapt, almost leaving in the first winter at the club. However, Platini successfully called for a change in tactics for the second half of the season, with him and Juventus seeing an upturn in fortunes, with Platini scoring 22 goals from mid-February to the end of the season, as Juventus reached the European Cup final and won the Coppa Italia. Mind you, he was doing this from the number 10 position, rather than as an out-and-out standout striker, which makes his three-peat of Serie A's top goalscorer during its absolute peak so impressive, ending a 16-year run of only Italians winning the award. His 1984 Ballon d'Or was won following the greatest individual European Championship campaign ever, as he led France to their first major honour, scoring 9 goals in 5 matches, including the winner in the final. Check out my previous videos on the history of the Euros to learn more about Platini's remarkable championship, and please remember to like if you're enjoying the video and subscribe. Platini's final Ballon d'Or in 1985 was won after leading Juventus as the top scorer for their first European Cup, scoring the winner in the final against a dominant Liverpool side, although the win was overshadowed by the Heysel disaster, in which 39 people died, leading UEFA to ban English clubs from competing in European competition. Platini would retire in 1987 at just 31, but is truly one of the greatest European footballers ever and deserving of his place among 3-time Ballon d'Or winners. It would be fair to say his legacy has been tarnished by his managerial and administrative career, which have been marred by group stage exit at Euro 92 and corruption claims. His era of dominance would be broken by Soviet striker Igor Belanov in 1986, ahead of World Cup Golden Boot winner Gary Lineker, a year in which the world was in awe of the brilliance of Diego Maradona. There was no doubt he was the greatest footballer alive. However, he wasn't eligible for the award, but Belanov's win was still a shock. Lineker had scored considerably more goals playing for Everton and Barcelona to go along with his Golden Boot at the World Cup, but it would be fair to say Belanov saved his best performances for when the world was watching. He scored a hat-trick for Valery Lobanovsky's Soviet Union in their round of 16 World Cup loss to Belgium, and was joint top scorer for Dynamo Kiev along with former Ballon d'Or winner Oleg Blokhin, as they won a second Cup Winners' Cup also under the management of Lobanovsky. The general feeling shared by Belanov himself was that his award was really for the team as a whole, who played the most entertaining football on the planet, rather than for just himself. By the late 80s, the Soviet Union began to allow footballers to move to Western Europe, with Belanov being one of the first to go when he joined Borussia Mönchengladbach in 1989. This move was a disaster, struggling to adapt to the culture and missing the management of one of the greatest coaches ever. Igor scored just 5 goals in 2 seasons at the club before moving to mid-table second-tier side Eintracht Braunschweig in 1991 at just 30 years of age. His sharp fall-off and peak years being behind the Iron Curtain means Belanov is one of the least known winners ever, which is remarkable considering the notoriety and prestige the winners either side of him are held in. And one of those we go now, with Ruud Gullit, who won the 1987 edition following securing a record transfer to AC Milan after winning PSV's second title in 2 years, scoring a remarkable 53 goals in 75 for the Dutch Giants. One of the most recognisable faces in the sport's history, Gullit could be described as the best utility man ever, having played in almost every position on the field during his career, excelling in all of them. He quickly settled in Milan, scoring 6 in 1987, playing mainly as a second striker behind either Pietro Paolo Vidris or Marco van Basten, and the latter one of those would be the man to beat out Gullit the following year, as a trio of Dutch AC Milan players monopolised the podium, a feat that will be unlikely to ever happen again. This achievement highlights the dominance of Milan and the Netherlands in 1988. Firstly, AC Milan ran home to a league title for the first time in 9 years, only losing 1 game since the turn of the year in all competitions, which was a 1-0 Coppa Italia loss to Ascoli. Gullit and Van Basten took their blossoming partnership to the Euros, where they secured the Netherlands' first major honour ever in fabulous style under the management of legendary Rinus Michels. Van Basten top scored with 5 goals, including the greatest goal in the championship's history against the Soviet Union in the final, following assisting Gullit's opener in that game. AC Milan signed one of the tournament's standout players, Frank Rijkaard, to add to their already frightening team with the aim of winning their first European Cup in 20 years. And they would achieve this in crushing fashion, beating Real Madrid 5-0 in the semi-final and former champions Stade Bucharest 4-0 in the final, with Van Basten scoring 10 in 9 in the competition. This would be enough to see him retain his Ballon d'Or, with AC Milan once again dominating the top 3, with Franco Baresi joining Van Basten and Rijkaard on this occasion. This would also be the year in which the Super Ballon d'Or was awarded to Alfredo Di Stefano, after he beat out multiple-time winners Johan Cruyff and Michel Platini to raise the most prestigious award. You might be asking, what is the Super Ballon d'Or? Well, it was an award for the best player for the past 3 decades and remains the only time the Super Ballon d'Or was ever awarded. with there being unconfirmed reports that a second one may be awarded in 2029 to honour the best player of the previous 40 years. Van Basten would win a record equalling third Ballon d'Or in 1992 at just 28 after winning a second Serie A Golden Boot and title, this time as Invincibles, beginning the 92-93 season with 21 goals in 21 matches. When he lifted that third Ballon d'Or, it felt inevitable that the Dutchman would break Cruyff and Platini's record, although what nobody knew then was that he would only ever play 3 more matches of professional football. Van Basten decided to have surgery on a long-standing ankle injury in December 1992 shortly after lifting the award, but the surgery failed, with him only returning late in the season through the use of injections to play the Champions League final. He was clearly in pain and was substituted in Milan's 1-0 loss to Marseille, and despite numerous efforts and different methods to heal the ankle, it never recovered, with him finally retiring in 1995, having not appeared since the 1993 Champions League final. Van Basten's career ended in heartbreaking fashion, with the true greatness of the man maybe not being fully appreciated by many, but he very much earned his position among the 3-time Ballon d'Or winners. Between his second and third Ballon d'Or, Lothar Matthäus and Jean-Pierre Papin lifted the Golden Ball. Matthäus, the most defensive player to win it since Beckenbauer, earned it after lifting the 1990 World Cup as captain. Described by Maradona as his toughest opponent, it would be Matthäus who was tasked with preventing the Argentine God in the World Cup final, as he kept the star man quiet as West Germany went on to win 1-0. It wasn't just his leadership and defensive work that was so impressive during the World Cup, however, with him leading the team with 4 goals, including a winner against Czechoslovakia in the quarter-final. He was handed a more creative role for Inter Milan the following season, scoring 15 in 23 before the turn of the year, which was enough to gain the momentum needed to win the Ballon d'Or ahead of World Cup Golden Ball winner Salvatore Schillaci. Papin, who played for Marseille in Ligue 1, made it the first time a new league had the Ballon d'Or winner since Cruyff in 1971, with no new league having it until 2023. The star forward finished 99 points ahead of 3 second-placed finishers after a remarkable year in which he won both the Ligue 1 and European Cup Golden Boot, as Marseille won a 3rd consecutive title and were the first French side to reach the European Cup final in 15 years. They would lose the final on penalties to Red Star Belgrade, but he would respond the following season, scoring 24 in the opening 24 matches, including 7 in 4 in the European Cup. Unfortunately for Papin, an underwhelming spell at AC Milan, in which he lost a European Cup final to Marseille in suspicious circumstances, and a disastrous time at Bayern Munich, prevented the great frontman from being regarded amongst the absolute best players of his era, and saw him miss out on France's first World Cup win in 1998. The 1993 Ballon d'Or was won by a player who was most associated with the 1994 USA World Cup. This is of course Roberto Baggio. Long before skying a penalty in California, Baggio finished in the top 10 of the Ballon d'Or in 1990 as a 23-year-old, in a year in which he switched Florence for Turin in a world record transfer. His first 2 seasons at the Italian Giants would be successful from a personal point of view, yet he was left empty-handed in terms of trophies. It was in 1993 at 26 when he finally won a trophy, with him being Juventus' best player and captain in the process, scoring all 3 goals against PSG in the semi-final and 2 against Borussia Dortmund in the final to claim the UEFA Cup. In a year that would end up being his highest scoring of his career, Baggio went on to run away with the Ballon d'Or ahead of Dennis Bergkamp and Eric Cantona. The following year, he scored 5 goals in the knockout stage of the World Cup, but infamously missed the decisive penalty, which saw Brazil move ahead of Italy to become the first nation to win it 4 times. This miss also saw him miss out on the World Cup Golden Ball and the Ballon d'Or, finishing second for both awards. Ahead of him for the Ballon d'Or was Barcelona and Bulgaria superstar Hristo Stoichkov, a player who had polled in all 3 years prior since moving to Spain. Stoichkov's brilliance at the World Cup, in addition to his form for Barcelona, was enough to see him finally win the most prestigious individual honour. A forward with extreme power, Stoichkov played the game with a passion and determination, which made him infectious to play with and horrible to play against. This passion would often overflow into rage and arrogance, with him getting multiple bans across his career. But following a red card in February, everything in 1994 came together for the Bulgarian. He scored 17 goals following the incident, including a brace on the final day of the season, to see them come back twice against Sevilla to claim their 3rd consecutive title after title rivals Deportivo La Coruña drew 0-0 with Valencia to bottle the title. He also scored a brace against Porto in the semi-final of the Champions League, before they were soundly beat by a dominant AC Milan in the final. But at the World Cup he shone so bright, winning the Golden Boot and reaching the semi-final with a nation that had never reached the quarter-final before, let alone a semi-final. Their run included victories over former champions Argentina and Germany, with Bulgaria only losing out to a Baggio brace, despite Stoichkov scoring a late goal in the first half himself. This would be enough to see him win the Ballon d'Or, with him famously saying, "There are only two Christs. One plays for Barcelona, the other is in heaven," after claiming the award. 1994 was the last great year of his career, never reaching double digits in a league season again. The following year would see the single biggest change to the Ballon d'Or ever, as France football decided to open the Ballon d'Or to any player from a European club, regardless of their nationality. This allowed AC Milan and Liberia star George Weah to become the first player who didn't represent a European nation to win the award in 1995, with Weah and Eusebio remaining the only two non-European or South American-born players to win the Ballon d'Or. This was a remarkable year, as a record-breaking 12 footballers received maximum votes to win the Ballon d'Or. However, in the end, 20 of the 49 journalists agreed Weah was the most deserving candidate, following a high-profile move to the Italian giants, AC Milan. Yes, again, Milan dominating the award. In terms of statistics, this was nowhere near his best year, scoring just 5 for PSG prior to his move and 10 for Milan, yet he is still seen by most to be the best player in the world. Why was that? Well, multiple reasons. First, it was his style of play, so quick and direct, a true joy to watch, especially in a Serie A where defence was king. Milan would go on to win the league that season, having scored just 60 goals in 34 matches, with Weah leading the team with 15 goals in all competitions. Whether he was the best player on the planet was questionable, but whether he was the most exciting player for the best team in the best league is not. And maybe that's why he got the nod in a year in which there were no standout candidates. The following year would have a standout candidate. From my perspective at least. The voters disagreed, however, as just 1 point split the top two, as Matthaus Sammer got the nod over Ronaldo. The clearest example in the history of the Ballon d'Or of team success trumping individual brilliance, Sammer's Bundesliga triumph with Borussia Dortmund and Euros win with Germany brought him lots of praise and celebration, having been converted from midfield to a sweeper by Ottmar Hitzfeld following his move to the Westfalen Stadion in 1993. Sammer was a truly wonderful and classy footballer and was the key of both Dortmund and Germany's success, being awarded player of the tournament at the Euros despite conceding a penalty in the final. However, to say he was the best footballer on the planet was questionable, with France football receiving considerable backlash following the announcement, with both Ronaldo and Alan Shearer being deemed more deserving after years where they practically scored a goal a game, with the lack of major trophies from either being costly. For Ronaldo, however, he would need just to wait a year to get his hands on the Ballon d'Or, as he blew away the competition to win the award by 154 points. At just 21, he broke George Best's record for the youngest recipient of the Ballon d'Or, a record he still holds to this day. A player with one of the fastest ascents in the history of football, Ronaldo had already won the World Cup, scored over 150 goals and broken the transfer record twice by the time he lifted the Golden Ball. A freak athlete, the likes we'd never seen before. Ronaldo had the pace of Mbappe, the strength of Haaland and the agility of Messi, helping him master his speciality of rounding the goalkeeper. This athleticism would cause untold problems to his body later on, but in 1997, he was undoubtedly the best player on the planet. In this year, he scored 30 and 31 for Barcelona, including the winner in El Clasico and the sole goal in the Cup Winners' Cup final against PSG, as he completed a historic first season at the Spanish Giants. But unfortunately, it would be his sole season at the club, as Barcelona withdrew a contract offer off the table after agreeing terms with the Brazilian, determining that the deal was unfeasible for the club to commit to. This would see him move to Inter Milan in a deal that would break the transfer record, making him one of just 4 players to ever break it twice. He instantly took to life in Milan, leading the team for goals as they ended the year top of Serie A, having not won it in 9 years. To go along with his 44 club goals in 1997, Ronaldo scored a quite ridiculous 15 goals for Brazil as they completed the treble by winning the Confederations Cup and Copa America, with him scoring 9 goals across the 2 tournaments, including 4 in the finals alone. He would carry this form into the following year, being one of the stars of the World Cup before infamously falling ill prior to the final, with him initially being named off the team sheet before returning and playing, but was clearly not well, as Brazil lost to France. He would finish 3rd at the 98 Ballon d'Or, before rupturing his patella tendon in 1999, which would plague the next few years of his career. Having not played a single game for Brazil in 2000 or 2001, a return to fitness prior to the 2002 World Cup saw Ronaldo earn a place in the squad. However, there were no great expectations for him to be Brazil's main man anymore, and therefore Ronaldo's 2002 World Cup shocked the world. The greatest injury comeback story in football history. Ronaldo would win the Golden Boot, scoring a ridiculous 8 goals, including both goals in the final, as Brazil won a record 5th World Cup. This World Cup would be followed up by a move to Real Madrid as a Galactico, and a second Ballon d'Or, which he won in a tight race ahead of international and club teammate Roberto Carlos, who almost became the only fullback to win the award. From the man who scored a brace in the 2002 World Cup final, to the man that scored 2 in the previous final, Zinedine Zidane ran away with the award in 1998. Still at Juventus, Zidane was one of the club's most important players as they overcame Inter's lead to win Serie A and reach the Champions League final. But as usual in a World Cup year, it was his performances for France that made his Ballon d'Or victory a foreseen conclusion, especially in the final against Brazil. Zidane scored 2 headed goals in the first half to hand France the first World Cup victory in their own backyard. One of the most aesthetically pleasing footballers to watch, Zidane was amazing in 1998. However, despite never winning the Ballon d'Or again, I think it's fair to say he would continue to improve over the next couple of years, with his performances for France at Euro 2000 being more consistently brilliant than even 98, with him only just missing out on the award that year, despite gaining more first place votes than anyone else. The Ballon d'Or also marked the end of Serie A's dominance at the pinnacle of club football, having had an unprecedented dominance over the award for almost 2 decades. 13 of the past 17 Ballon d'Ors had been won by a player playing in Italy. The league's inability to adapt to the globalisation of the sport was costly, with the Premier League and in particular Spain's 2 super clubs taking full advantage of the potential it had to offer, both on and off the field, with them having a stranglehold over the Ballon d'Or ever since, with 17 of the past 24 Ballon d'Ors being awarded to a footballer playing for either Real Madrid or Barcelona, beginning with Rivaldo's victory in 1999. Having won the title in the 97-98 season, the first half of Barcelona's attempted title defence had been pitiful, entering 1999 ninth in the league, having lost 5 of their previous 7 La Liga matches and already being knocked out of the Champions League in the group stage. Manager Louis van Gaal's position was under extreme pressure, and Rivaldo, who had top scored the previous season, had scored just 6 league goals. But his first match of the new year against Alaves was a sign of a career-defining year, as Rivaldo scored 2 and assisted 2 as Barcelona made a 7-1 statement victory. He went on to score 20 and assist 11 in their final 26 matches of the season, as Barcelona came back to claim a historic title, with him scoring some iconic goals with his wonderful left foot in the process. But it was at the Copa America where he became the undeniable favourite for the Ballon d'Or, ahead of treble winner David Beckham, recovering from a red card in the group stage to score in every knockout match, including 2 in the final, as the Seleção secured a second successive Copa America title, with Rivaldo earning the Golden Boot and Player of the Tournament award, and the Ballon d'Or would follow later in the year, after another impressive start to the season with Barcelona. The following year would see the only player who played for both Spanish super clubs in the same Ballon d'Or winning year claim the award. This was of course Luis Figo. In the year he made the most controversial and politically charged transfer ever, Figo beat out future Galactico teammate Zidane to win the award. Check out my video on the history of the transfer record after this video if you want to learn the factors that led him to switching Catalonia for the capital, but on the pitch he was breathtaking for both clubs. The creative heartbeat of both teams off the right wing, Figo was particularly strong in the Champions League for Barcelona in the 99-2000 season, scoring 5 and assisting 9 as Barcelona reached the semi-final. He was also the standout player for a resurgent Portugal at Euro 2000. A bit foreign to the modern football fan, Portugal was far from being a football powerhouse in the 20th century, qualifying for just 2 World Cups and 2 Euros. Therefore, the nation's run to the semi-final in 2000, which included victories over England and Germany, was historic, with the squad earning the Golden Generation tag. Figo was the standout player in the team, scoring the opener against England and registering 3 assists, helping him earn a place in the team of the tournament. Despite the controversy and pressure he was under at Real Madrid, Figo took to the club like a duck to water, helping guide the team, who finished 5th in the league the season prior, although they had won the Champions League to be fair, to sit top of the league at the turn of the year, having scored 5 goals and registered 8 assists in 14 La Liga matches, to go along with another masterful individual campaign in Europe, getting 7 goal involvements in 7 games in the Champions League. 2001 would see Michael Owen become the second youngest footballer to win the Ballon d'Or after a trophy-littered year with Liverpool. Owen was remarkably the first English-based footballer to win the award since George Best in 1968, and the first to win it at a club other than Manchester United since the inaugural award in 1956. A footballer who took to the Premier League quicker than anyone before, Owen had won 2 Premier League Golden Boots as a teenager and scored one of England's most iconic goals ever at the 98 World Cup against Argentina. In 2001, the deadly and rapid forward was part of Gerard Houllière's Liverpool side that won the League Cup, FA Cup, UEFA Cup, UEFA Super Cup and Charity Shield. with his late brace against an extremely strong Arsenal in the FA Cup final being the pinnacle of his year at Liverpool. However, the standout performance of his year actually came in a World Cup qualifier for England away in Germany. The young forward scored a hat-trick as England smashed their old rivals 5-1, with many observers determining it to be one of the nation's greatest ever performances. Across the year, Owen scored 38 goals for club and country, despite missing over 10 games from 2 different injuries. These injury problems would go on to prevent Owen from maintaining his brilliant form he showcased as a youngster going forward, receiving his final Ballon d'Or vote in 2003 at just 24. Following Ronaldo's victory in 2002, Juventus's Pavel Nedved controversially won it in 2003 ahead of a prime Thierry Henry. Probably the weakest player to win the Ballon d'Or this century, Nedved was the standout player for a Juventus side that won the Serie A and reached a Champions League final. Zidane's replacement at the Old Lady, Nedved was a hard-working and beautiful footballer to watch. A player worth more than a stat sheet could tell you, although with 14 goals and 17 assists, it was a great year for the Czech wide man on this regard also. Nedved was a player that made any team he played in considerably better. You could very much argue Henry, who scored 32 and assisted 28 as Arsenal won the FA Cup and finished the second half of the year unbeaten in the Premier League, deserved the award, but there is no taking away for Nedved's fabulous year. Andrei Shevchenko recovered from an underwhelming 2002-03 season to win the Ballon d'Or in 2004. The Ukrainian striker had established himself as one of the supreme number 9s in the world whilst playing for Dynamo Kiev, leading the team to the semi-final of the Champions League in 1999. The third man to win the Golden Ball, having played for Dynamo Kiev, Shevchenko had also been coached and mentored by Valery Lobanovsky, highlighting how special a manager Lobanovsky was and why he is considered by many to be one of the greatest coaches ever. Despite winning the Champions League in 2003, Shevchenko had one of his worst goal-scoring seasons of his career and looked way off his best, but in 2004 this changed, scoring 37 goals as he won a second Serie A Golden Boot and won his only title at the San Siro. The Ballon d'Or would return to Spain in 2005 when Ronaldinho took home the award after a fantastic year which saw him become just the second Barcelona player to ever get a round of applause at the Bernabeu after he scored a marvellous solo goal in a 3-0 win, the best goal scoring and assisting year of his career. 2005 marked the year Ronaldinho, a player who had long been regarded as one of the most skillful and joyful players to watch, added world-class output. He scored 30 and registered 24 assists for club and country as he won his first La Liga title ahead of a stacked Real Madrid squad which contained the Galacticos of Beckham, Ronaldo, Carlos, Figo and Zidane, and scored 3 goals en route to claiming Brazil's record-equaling second Confederations Cup, including a goal in their famous 4-1 final victory against Argentina. 2006 would mark just the third time a defender won the Ballon d'Or, as World Cup winning captain Fabio Cannavaro took home the prize ahead of international goalkeeper Gianluigi Buffon. The defender was part of a Juventus team that only conceded over 1 goal once in the back end of the 2005-2006 season, as they claimed the title, with him being awarded Serie A Player of the Year. However, this title would be stripped, and Juventus would be relegated to Serie B after the club were found guilty for match fixing and bribing referees. He would therefore follow coach Fabio Capello to Real Madrid in the summer of 2006. But first he had a World Cup to win, and win he would, playing every minute as Italy lifted their 4th World Cup, conceding just 2 goals across 7 matches, neither of which were from open play. Cannavaro was a rock at the back, pocketing every forward he came up against, which is so impressive considering his 5'9" height. Cannavaro had to overcome many hurdles to reach the top, with many people in the game considering him too small to play at the heart of defence despite his obvious quality. His World Cup performance proved everyone who doubted him wrong. He took to life instantly at Real Madrid, keeping 7 clean sheets in his first 19 games at the club, with Real Madrid conceding in all 5 matches he didn't play. 2007 would see more changes to the Ballon d'Or, as journalists from around the world were invited to vote on the award rather than just Europeans, and footballers from any league in the world were now eligible for votes. The winner of this award was Ricardo Kaká. The Brazilian attacking midfielder was the main spark of an ageing AC Milan side which won the Champions League, with Kaká top scoring in the competition, scoring 10 goals, including 3 across 2 legs against Manchester United in the semi-final. He also assisted Inzaghi's winning goal in the final with a lovely disguised through ball. To put into context the significance of his Champions League campaign, Ruud van Nistelrooy in 2003 was the only player in the previous 25 years to score more in a single season, which is ridiculous considering he played in midfield. But the more significant milestone of this Ballon d'Or ceremony were the 2 men standing next to him on the podium, a 22-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo and a 20-year-old Lionel Messi. Because what we didn't know then was that these two players would have the greatest rivalry in sports history, dominating the Ballon d'Or, winning 13 of the next 15 golden balls between them, including every single one between 2008 and 2017. Ronaldo won the first one of those in 2008 when he led Manchester United to a Premier League and Champions League double, becoming the first winger to win the Premier League Golden Boot in the process, as well as top scoring in the Champions League. Lionel Messi then went mad, winning 4 in a row, becoming the record holder in 2012 at just 25 years of age, winning 3 La Liga titles, 2 Champions Leagues, 2 Club World Cups, 2 Copa del Reys, 3 Super Copas, and 2 UEFA Super Cups during this period, while setting the all-time record goal tally in a single year in 2012, when he scored an eye-watering 91 goals from 69 matches. Ronaldo would respond by winning it in 2013 and 2014, with 2013 being the closest someone had come to breaking the duopoly, as Frank Ribery finished just 4% of votes off Ronaldo in a year he was behind standout player as they won the treble, a season that would have almost certainly been good enough to win a Ballon d'Or in any other era. Messi's Champions League win would see him regain it in 2015, before Ronaldo drew level by going back-to-back in 2016 and 2017, after claiming the first 2 Champions Leagues of the three-peat. 2018 would see the first player not named Messi or Ronaldo win it since Kaká in 2007, but first I'll conclude on Messi, who would go on to win 3 more Ballon d'Ors in 2019, 2021 and 2023, with the final one of those being achieved following claiming his long-awaited World Cup. At Inter Miami, when the Ballon d'Or was awarded, Messi became the first player to win the trophy whilst playing for a club outside of Europe. Messi and Ronaldo dominate pretty much every record in regard to the Ballon d'Or and wider football, placing in the top 2 for the following: most Ballon d'Or wins, most Ballon d'Or podiums, most Ballon d'Or top 5s, most Ballon d'Or top 10s, most Ballon d'Or votes, most years receiving Ballon d'Or votes, most consecutive years receiving Ballon d'Or votes, longest spell between first and final Ballon d'Or, most international goals, most Champions League goals, most top 5 league goals, most European golden shoes, most assists in the Champions League, as well as many more individual records that the pair hold. During their period of dominance, for a brief 6-year spell, the Ballon d'Or merged with the FIFA World Player of the Year, which gave international coaches and captains a vote in the Ballon d'Or, as well as journalists. But by 2018, the Ballon d'Or was in its 3rd year away from FIFA, and the journalists voted Luka Modric as their winner. I think it's fair to say there was some voter fatigue towards Messi and Ronaldo by this point, as the pair were still pretty clearly the best 2 footballers on the planet. But that's nothing to take away from Modric, who had a truly fabulous year. The metronomic heartbeat of the Real Madrid side that won its 3rd consecutive Champions League, 2018 was the year in which his performances for Croatia saw Modric earn the starlight and praise he had long deserved. Croatia, a nation which only formed in the 1990s following the fall of Yugoslavia, has a population below 4 million, yet has consistently produced top-level footballers, and Modric is the pick of the bunch, with it all coming together in Russia as they overcame the likes of Argentina and England to reach their maiden World Cup final. They lost the final to France, yet Modric was awarded the Golden Ball and was lauded for his performances during the tournament, scoring 2 goals himself, in addition to 2 crucial penalties in their round of 16 and quarter-final penalty shootouts, plus being the main man to gain control in their semi-final with England after conceding just 5 minutes in. In the aftermath of Xavi and Iniesta leaving Europe without ever winning a Ballon d'Or, many regard Modric's Ballon d'Or victory as a life achievement award for his years of quality performances and service to the sport, in a similar light to Stanley Matthews all the way back in 1956. The 2020 Ballon d'Or was controversially cancelled due to the breakout of COVID-19, robbing iconic Bayern Munich forward Robert Lewandowski after a historic 45-goal year in which he led the German Giants to another treble, claiming an infamous 8-2 victory over Messi's Barcelona in the process. France Football did use this opportunity to bring the award in line with the football calendar rather than the calendar year, with the most recent first-time winner being veteran Real Madrid forward Karim Benzema in 2022, with him becoming the oldest first-time winner since Stanley Matthews in the process. A player who had played much of his career as a facilitator to Cristiano Ronaldo and Gareth Bale, the Frenchman took advantage of Ronaldo's exit to Juventus and Bale's injury problems to become Real Madrid's star man. He scored 44 goals and got 15 assists in 46 matches as Real Madrid won a record-extending 35th league title and 14th Champions League. His performances in the knockout stage of the Champions League were particularly impressive, scoring 11 goals in 7 matches, which included a second-half hat-trick against PSG in the round of 16 to overcome a 3-1 aggregate deficit. another hat-trick in the quarter-final, this time at Stamford Bridge, before scoring the winner in the second leg in extra time, a feat he would repeat in the semi-final, as he won and scored a penalty in extra time to send Real Madrid to the final in a famous comeback victory against Manchester City. Benzema's victory brings us to the end of the history of the Ballon d'Or, with the upcoming 2024 ceremony throwing up the certainty of a new winner, adding their name and story to the rich tapestry of football icons from Blackpool to Miami who have lifted the Ballon d'Or.